So our goal is to wash and linen back this poster, connecting the two panels so it can be displayed in one solid piece. One of the things that we are hoping to achieve is a significant reduction in the acid discoloration and particularly the foxing that is present throughout the paper color.
This is an extremely rare Japanese station front poster in from our friends at Japan Poster Shop. To their knowledge, this is currently the only available example of this massive Japanese format. We started this project with our standard linen backing process, washing the poster with filtered water and a mild detergent. This helps to relax the paper fibers and remove impurities that have built up over time. Star Wars opened in Japan in 1978, but this poster was actually part of the 1982 campaign promoting the Japanese language dubbed version of the film. While this poster is technically a re-release, it marks the moment Star Wars returned to Japanese cinemas in dubbed form. To treat the acid discoloration and foxing, we introduced a controlled bleaching agent. Acid causes paper fibers to weaken and discolor over time, so reducing it helps preserve the structure of the paper while also improving the vibrancy of the inks. After rinsing the piece, we noticed some delamination. This can happen to posters on a thicker stock where the layers that make up the paper start to separate from one another. Before mounting, we addressed the delamination by carefully injecting adhesive through the back of the poster to secure the separated layers. A reversible adhesive was then applied, and the first panel was mounted to a stretch canvas frame lined with acid-free barrier paper. We repeated the same cleaning process on the second panel before mounting it to the frame, using the printer's crop marks as guides while carefully positioning the panel to achieve the best overall alignment. As we had mentioned before, this poster came to us from Japan Poster Shop, today's sponsor. They have a collection of over 10,000 original vintage and contemporary Japanese film and anime posters, including true museum-grade rarities. And they're not just an online shop. They also run a by-appointment gallery space in Shibuya, Tokyo, focused on top-tier Japanese posters. Whether you're a collector or just getting started with Japanese film posters, Japan Poster Shop is a great place to start. You'll find a link in the description and use code 4thCone at checkout for 20% off store-wide.
If you look through here, there's a bit of foxing, and if you zoom up, there's a few areas where we had to inject some glue because the layers of the paper were separating or delaminating. So those needed to be addressed, and those left a little bit of marks. So my initial plan in the preparatory phase of this would be to see if I could lighten some of this staining and maybe level some of the indentations of where we had to go in and inject with sandpaper and the Perfection pencil to see if I can soften that before airbrushing to help keep the airbrushing lighter and more minimal. Especially on something this size, it's going to be hard to kind of adjust for the angle issues of how the airbrush is going to lay. So by keeping it lighter, it's going to work in our advantage to have like a little bit more of a uniform result finish-wise. This is pretty much where the bulk of the damage is, but there is some dinginess throughout the rest of the border. So I'm probably going to have to open up or mask this entire section and kind of lightly dust over the whole thing to kind of make the airbrush blend a little bit more seamlessly, because if it's too targeted, it kind of creates more of like a discrepancy in the finish. And so by blending it out, it kind of creates a more uniform result. But in order to do that, we do have to mask all of these letters and this kind of pinstripe. Chelsea had mentioned that there's a little bit of pigment loss in some of this creasing, which is pretty minimal. So we'll just go ahead and fill that in since we are trying to kind of create like a complete restoration where we're doing the whole border. So it makes sense to kind of address some of the things in the image.
We prepped for restoration by masking the border, main image, and text throughout the poster. Posters of this type were meant to be pasted directly to a public display surface. Once glued to a station front board, removal in intact collectible condition would have been extremely unlikely. This example survived because it was never pasted or used. Instead, it remained folded and stored for decades. An X-Acto blade and Perfection eraser were then carefully used to reduce the appearance of the damage. To mask the text, we applied low-tack tape and cut a precise mask with an X-Acto blade. The artist applies a calibrated amount of pressure, just enough to cut through the tape without scoring the poster. Biscuit was applied as a temporary masking fluid to protect the smaller text. We then began airbrushing, applying a fine mist of color only where needed to minimize the amount of restoration while creating an even finish. The masking was then removed throughout the poster using various tools, including a rubber cement pickup where the biscuit was used. Missing color along the fold lines was then restored through inpainting, using a variety of materials, which were layered in different combinations to match the original color, texture, and finish as closely as possible. The poster was cut down from the frame, and a 1-inch linen margin was trimmed around the edges. This project really was a huge undertaking, and Shannon did a wonderful job. Thank you so much for watching. A huge thank you to Japan Poster Shop for sponsoring this video. And if you enjoyed this video, be sure to like and subscribe. If you're a fan of Star Wars and ASMR, you might like this video too.